Matthew, I can't believe that it's 4 years now since the Herbert Howells Society first brought us together to discuss Herbert Howells's piano music, Herbert Howells's unknown piano music, really, at that point when we met in 2017 in Cambridge. Since then, we've expanded that with lectures and recitals, and we've had a marvelous time at the Royal Academy of Music and at the Three Choirs in Worcester. And of course, you've released your fantastic CD on Naxos, which has done extremely well in terms of downloads and sales. And of course, Novello have also released 28 of these manuscripts that I've edited in this volume. I've got the volume here, which I'm very pleased with. And you've also been releasing some performances on your YouTube channel, which have gone down very well. I wonder, looking ahead, I know you're preparing for your second volume for Naxos, which is very exciting. I just wondered how preparations are going for that.
They're going very well now. So obviously COVID slightly got in the way of taking things forward, partly because of the practicalities of recording. But yeah, we're on track. So I shall be going into the studio in December and recording. I did a quick tally this morning. I think there'll be 16 unrecorded pieces that will go on the next volume, ranging from works that predate even music that was on the first release, and then goes all the way again to the end of Howells's life. So it's very much a companion volume in many respects, actually, stylistically and conceptually.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I was looking at my notes, and actually, it was 1907 that Howells went to the Royal Academy of Music and auditioned as a pianist, and actually had an offer to come to the Royal Academy of Music and declined because he, at that point, had decided that he really wanted to study composition with a man called Stanford, as he put it. I'm not entirely sure how that went down with the RAM panel at that point. But obviously he then went back to Gloucestershire and spent this time looking at composition in more detail. You've got some pieces from 1908, so the following year. What do they tell us about Howells? What do you make of these 1908 pieces?
So these pieces came to my attention just before we went into the studio for the first album, and I wanted to just spend a bit of time getting to know them. I can well believe an offer for a young pianist based on the way these pieces play. And I mean, they're very natural under the fingers and kind of steeped in the tradition of romantic piano, the contemporaneous kind of style. And it's been lovely to get to know them. Really, they're quite different. There's in terms of titles, the Arab Song to a Wildflower, Romance, and then there's a piece called Melody from 1909. They're quite different from the music that he published later, but very natural sounding and pleasant. And like you said, some of those are on my YouTube channel already.
Yeah, it certainly sent me back looking at what he might have heard in the Gloucestershire area,
Yeah.
because and with the help of other pianists and other musicologists, I've been kind of showing scores to people and saying which composers do you hear in this, because I'm just really amazed by certainly his knowledge of French music, but also his knowledge of well, the way in which he assimilated Edward Elgar's language at that point, and I think there are also hints of Russian music, aren't there? There are more than a couple of hints of Mussorgsky, I think, in particular.
And Rachmaninoff, and not only in the choice of tonalities, but also the way he notates things, and there's kind of textures that he has in mind. But the interesting thing, even then, in spite of the fact that a lot of it seems inspired by things he must have been hearing, each piece is quite different. It's not like he's trying to develop in a particular style. Actually, it's more like he wants to encounter a style under his own pen, and then he moves on and tries to kind of find a different style. So there's still that impetus towards variety, piece from piece, which is quite striking, particularly for someone so young.
Yes, I find it interesting in the manuscript book that contains all of these early pieces that they are not in chronological order. So I think he planned it out exactly what he was going to compose, possibly over the year, and then kind of allocated pages to them,
Mm.
and then goes back and forth. You can imagine him taking them back and forth to lessons with Herbert Brewer. Um, and the one of the pieces I was hearing these Russian influences the other day in the legend, but I was then thinking, oh well, actually in the book he then started a piece called Gnomes, which is it's such an unusual title, but it immediately made me think of pictures at an exhibition and Mussorgsky again.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he'd got his hands on a copy of that by then, because I think Brewer was feeding him some really quite interesting music to study and look at.
Mm. Also, I think I mentioned before that this is, I, I'm convinced he must have known Liszt too. And I mentioned before Nomenreigen. Of course, it's not relevant because uh, directly because the piece Gnomes is not finished. But there is a hint of the grander romantic tradition, not just the English one, but the Austro-Germanic one too.
Yes, and quite virtuosic. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. At the other end of the of his life, we've got the piano sonatina. So this is a celebrated piece that's been published for a while. How do you feel about coming to that? Because that unlike a lot of the other repertoire, has been recorded. So what are your thoughts on that, the 1971 piece?
Well, of course, that's the piece that one knows initially, and is perhaps the piece one thought of or would have thought of uh, in considering Howells as a piano composer. So it's a piece I've known for quite a while. I think I think the thing that stands out most to me playing it is looking at the context of the entirety of Howells's piano music. If we've got all of it, I think it's quite a different piece, partly because of the development of the composition. You know, the fact that the third movement went through several phases, and in fact, in a different version is at the very end of my first album. So I think it's a piece that will be heard differently in the context that we now know it to have been written in, and probably I would want to reflect that.
Absolutely, yes. I was wondering if you heard other recordings of it, because I remember when you played it in Cambridge, I was really struck by just how different your interpretation was.
Yes, I knew it more to play because I had a copy of it, but I mean, obviously, there's other two other well-known recordings, some live recordings on YouTube. Um, it's the sentiment of the piece, I think, that's the striking thing, because it's not as if there is a sonatina which represents Howells's major foray into piano writing. What we know now, in fact, is just one of many different guises under which he wrote for the piano, and so I'm quite struck when I play it now that it's in a particular tradition rather than being a one-off.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, to step back a little bit, I know you've been particularly interested in the piano music that Herbert Howells wrote specifically for the ABRSM, as for sight reading, because he was an examiner at one point and worked a lot with the board. What have you learned from Howells's sight reading exercises? And I know they're fascinating to you, so many people go, "Why?"
Well, I don't know. I think the thing about I said the thing about seeing on Howells's list of works that he wrote pieces for sight reading is that the title would normally suggest that these pieces are going to be insignificant and of no real musical interest or not comparable. And I think it was precisely because everything about Howells's piano music has been surprising that I felt I shouldn't, it would be just wrong to dismiss the possibility that something interesting is there. And obviously I was aware that they'd been published for organ, kind of transcribed by Alan Ridout. And I felt that unless I saw the originals, I wouldn't really know what we were dealing with. And not to mention, I suspected that there were more than even in that Alan Ridout volume, in which I think there's 40 or about. So, or maybe fewer actually, 25. But it seemed to me a too small a number if you take the grades together. So yes, I have sought out, with the help of several people, including yourself, the piano versions, or the original versions, and I think it's fair to say not all of them are profound, as you would expect for grade 2, for instance. On the other hand, some of them are stylistically very interesting, and not only the ones in the higher grades. So I'm just in the process of deciding really whether or not they merit recording, but also where they fit stylistically in relation, because some of them are quite early, 1924, and Howells is still developing.
Absolutely, yeah. There's another set that you're recording from 1928, isn't the country pageant that was issued by OUP, but and later reissued by the ABRSM, which I think is another example of Howells' educational piano music. But I was really struck by this set, and particularly the one the third one. There was a most beautiful lady. Because certainly, yes, I was expecting something that made certain concessions for young pianists, and I couldn't believe the quality of the melody there and the accompaniment, and it really is on a par with some of Howells's finest writing. So I think, yeah, you're right to explore all of the alleyways in order to get this complete picture.
Because what we're finding is that in every stage and in every style, the quality is never, if it's possible to kind of put oneself in a position to judge that, the quality is not ever low. So the possibility of inventiveness at every period is statistically, shall we say, is very high now. So yes, the country pageant, and then there's also a little book of dances from the same year, which is, I was playing through that last night, and actually they're really beautiful. The other interesting thing about the next album is that there will be several sets of pieces, including an even earlier set called Once Upon a Time, which is again on my YouTube channel. These are incredibly fine, not just incredibly fine pieces of music, but they are very, very good piano writing.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think they really would inspire, particularly young pianists, because it's always important that they have really the finest repertoire to get started on, isn't it?
Yes, and actually that is reflective of an educational ethos that Howells obviously felt himself to be part of, but not to make concessions in terms of technical expectations or music, or allowing musical ideas to flow, and modally and rhythmically. There's always something it's always something of a test, really, but also something authentic.
Yeah, certainly Howells, the educationalist, isn't something that has received a lot of scholarly attention. So it'll give us another new glimpse of Herbert. I wonder whether we can finish just by mentioning your recital in November. I know you're returning to Cambridge with some of this music. So what are your plans, and when is that?
Well, so I shall be at St Catherine's College, which is well known for having it had a very important piano bequest in the mid 20th century, and so it's one of the professional series recitals, and I'll be playing as much as I can from the forthcoming album ahead of the recording sessions. I'm also delighted to be giving the world premiere of a couple of very beautiful pieces by Paul Spicer, which are very much in the vein of Howells' writing. So no, it would be a nice event. It but get postponed by COVID twice over, actually. But the good thing about that is that I shall have a chance to play to a public audience before they hear it on the disc.
Super, super. Well, I really look forward to that recital and the recording sessions in December. Fingers crossed, COVID will not intervene again. But thank you very much for your update today, and we look forward to it.
Thanks for your time.